Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have two amazing guests to introduce to you now. June Dixon and Sam Feldman are new guests to the podcasting world, and we are very fortunate enough to host them here on Boundless Body Radio for the very first time. That's so cool. June and Sam were recently involved in a study done by one of our favorite guests, Nicole Laurent. We have hosted Nicole several times on our show. She's one of our favorite guests on episode 248, 343, 438, and 538 of Boundless Body Radio. Sam Feldman was diagnosed with bipolar type I in college and suffered debilitating symptoms until last year, and June Dixon was his main support person during his illness. Sam has had numerous bipolar episodes, some resulting in hospitalization, and his illness has damaged his interpersonal relationships and has made it impossible to work full time in spite of the fact that he's very intelligent and very well educated. In 2023, after deciding that he wanted to lose weight, his medical doctor recommended a book recommending avoiding sugar, flour, and ultra-processed foods. Today, Sam's story is a very hopeful message for those with a long-time diagnosis or a family history of mental illness. June and Sam, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
It's such an honor to host you. It's so cool that we have the common link in Nicole Laurent. We absolutely love her and love her work. I was so lucky to be introduced to her, several years ago. And like we said in the introduction, we've been able to talk to her a few times. Luckily, by the time this episode comes out, I will have met her in person for the very first time at the Symposium for Metabolic Health in San Diego. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. What has it been like? I know you don't actually consult with her, but what has it been like to work with Nicole in the way that you have?
Well, I found her to be very sharp and have some very interesting opinions on some things that I've gone through very recently. So I really appreciated what she had to say and respected the work that she's doing.
Yeah. How about you, June?
She's just a lovely person. I had such a nice time talking to her.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. She is a very lovely person for sure. It's interesting to contemplate that, her own story involved her own mental suffering. And so, Sam, when you say, hey, this person is really sharp and has some, criticisms of certain things, imagine the version of Nicole that was not very sharp and had difficulty with all kinds of mental health issues. It's hard to imagine only knowing the version of Nicole that we know.
That's true.
Yeah.
She's very bubbly. I hear she's really great on the dance floor. So I don't know if any dance party is going to break out in San Diego, but if so, I'll report back and let you know how they go. Like we said in the introduction, June and Sam, we don't know that much about you. This is your first time ever doing this. So thank you so very much for being willing to talk about this stuff. Sam, I don't know, should we start with you and kind of talk about your experience and your journey into mental health? And please, June, we'll also talk about your story, but feel free to interject anytime if you got things to add to the story.
Okay.
And he's the star of the show, so.
I think it's interesting to see what a family member goes through and how they can participate in the healing process as well.
Why don't you start with again from the beginning, I guess?
Oh, I guess from where I kind of consider, it's not really the beginning of my life, but it's kind of where I consider this journey to have started. I had just graduated college. It was 1997, so I'm giving away my age already. And I had a difficult relationship with my family I was born into, basically. And but my mother had been very resistant to my father and I both getting psychiatric treatment. But she encouraged me to go to a doctor that he had been to. And this doctor told me that, well, you have bipolar disorder. And I basically asked him why. And he said, because your father has it. And that just didn't sit with me very well, because I know we're very different people. And I just went on from there and ignored all the medicine I was given, the lithium and things like that. I just didn't believe it. I tried the lithium briefly, and it just kind of felt funny on my tongue, and it just didn't seem right. I just didn't get a good feeling from it at all. So I just, I don't know if I threw it out or just left it sit somewhere for a while, honestly. So I went on with my life after that, kind of having that in the back that I had this mental illness somehow. Somebody gave me their opinion that I had this mental illness. And I went on to several different jobs. The year before I met June, I actually went through 6 different jobs, and they all lasted maybe a couple months or less, some even a couple of days, literally.
Wow.
And what I was doing right before I met her, and I don't know why she got involved with a guy like me, but about 3 weeks before I met her, I checked myself into the psychiatric unit. And basically part of my treatment was to find something to do because I had gone through all these periods of unemployment and hopping from job to job. And they said I needed to basically do something meaningful. So I decided to go back to college to get a teaching certification. And I went to our local college, Youngstown State University. And that's where, like I said, 3 weeks later, after I got out of the hospital, I met the person who would become my lovely wife.
Lovely.
I got involved with him.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so the diagnosis of bipolar, it's been 30 years since you've been diagnosed. How has mental health changed in that time? Like, do you remember the stigma around mental health at that time? I know it's at the very least coming to the forefront a little bit, and hopefully we're making progress as a culture and a society by talking about some of these things more. But what was that like back in the mid 90s?
Well, it seemed like I would say the biggest difference between then and now was that people just didn't talk about it then. The ice wasn't broken to come out and have a certain amount of pride in your situation. And it just seemed like you had to keep it covered. There was a lot of shame, a lot more shame than there is today, I think. So I would say that those are the biggest changes since the 90s.
Yeah, okay. That's very well explained. June, what was it like to meet Sam and learn about what his, day-to-day life was like, and knowing we're going to get with somebody who had to deal with some of this? What was that like?
Well, when we met, of course, we were both in college at the time. I was actually a psych major. So I had some background and I knew what I was getting involved with. Like I said, I mean, just from the time that I met him, he's the kindest person that you'll ever meet and so funny. And we just had such a good time together that I thought, he has this diagnosis. It's going to be difficult, but, it was so good, that I really felt like we could make it work. And, knowing what it was going to be like, I thought, okay, well, it's going to end up with me being kind of caretaker. So I was prepared. I don't know if I was like fully prepared for, how it was going to actually come down, but I knew when I was getting into it, what I was getting into. And I had a little bit of background in some of the therapies and, ways that you can kind of shape behavior and things like that. So, I was using behavior modification principles and, kind of trying to help him. Yeah, trying to, to help him to do better, and always encouraging him to, medication and things like that. So, so I feel like I was, probably about the best support person that he could have had, because his family of origin was, his mom and dad were completely not supportive. His dad, of course, had the same diagnosis and was not prepared to be supportive because he had his own problems. And, so it wasn't very good for him, I think, with that situation going on. So, so although it has been difficult at times, and, really a lot of times, when over the years, he's had episodes and such, and he's needed a lot of help and not been able to work, not been able to support himself. So I had to take on a lot of that. I was both primary caregiver for our family and primary wage earner, because, that was just kind of how it had to be. So, so it was challenging, but, definitely worth it.
Wow, you guys definitely seem like a wonderful fit as far as that goes. That's wonderful. I love that. Okay, you talked about the experience, Sam, of checking yourself into a psychiatric ward. If I said that right, like, what was that experience like? Why did you decide you needed to check yourself into it as well?
Well, the phrase that kind of kept running through my mind in the time leading up to that was that I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of being dysfunctional. And this was the only way I knew how to get help in an urgent way, basically, because I didn't get support from my own family to you go to counseling or to see a doctor regularly or to take medicine or even admit that I had some sort of a problem. So I knew from my father's past that he had been, several times had been basically taken away to the psychiatric unit. And I knew that existed. And I had observed over the years, you know, the bad and the good things that did for him. And I thought maybe with my personality that maybe it would work better for me than it had for him.
Okay. Wow. And you do tend to hear a lot of the horror stories. You mentioned obviously you go there for help. You also hear some of the, the horror stories of what happens in those institutions. But you were suffering enough to know that you wanted to take that step and do that yourself. So what was your time inside like? Like was it a horror show, or did you find the help that you needed at the time?
No, the first time I went in, it was a pretty pleasant experience. I found that there was a lot of time to kind of socialize with the other patients, and that was pretty pleasant. And there were arts and craft activities, which I've always been interested in. And there was not a lot of counseling, not really a lot of time with the doctor that you would get, or a counselor. I don't know if there's really any time with a psychologist or a social worker or anything like that. But I would say overall, compared to what I was going through in the weeks preceding that my time in the hospital wasn't too bad.
Okay, interesting. I definitely don't want to. I don't want to pin this on the listeners of the show. I'm just going to say this is my own ignorance. I always think of like this is you're going into a padded room with a straight jacket and you're going to get injected with a bunch of stuff. What you just described is completely different. I'm sure my listeners are not nearly as ignorant as I am as to what the situation you were going into. That does sound.
Those are the people who are like dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. Sam doesn't look too dangerous. No offense, but you don't look like you're very dangerous. And you mentioned something interesting that I hadn't considered as well. Obviously you had the experience with your dad. You had some experience with, dealing with that diagnosis, but it didn't sound like that was the very best resource. To find other people that were dealing with similar things and find a community and visit with other people, that must have been really helpful for you.
Yeah, that was a real change of pace because I had never really told anybody. My friends at the time didn't really know what I was going through. And so that was kind of a refreshing change to find out there were other people who were having a battle for their sanity, basically. And I didn't mind that at all, honestly.
That kind of goes back to like the 90s, the question about the 90s. And we didn't tell anyone that he had a mental illness. I was not comfortable. I had what do they call that? FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, leave from work. And I was like horrified to have to tell my boss that, I need this, I might need to take sick leave because my husband has this illness. You have to fill out these forms and, what does he have? Well, he has bipolar 1 with psychotic. Oh my gosh, And it, when I told her, she had an uncle with the same diagnosis. And I was like, what's so bad about that then? We ended up actually, talking about that, and she was already familiar with it, but there was, that whole culture of like, you don't want anyone to know, we hid it from our family, no one knew. So.
Yeah, that would be very, very challenging for sure. Okay, yeah. I've got this question for each one of you. I'm going to ask you both independently because I want each one of your perspectives. Sam, I want to start with you. What is it like to live with bipolar? For somebody who doesn't know what is it like, can you describe what life is like when you're diagnosed bipolar?
Well, the analogy I don't like it the best, but I think it describes it the best. It's like having a monster living in your closet. It's like sometimes you can close the closet door, you can lock it, but when you least expect it, that monster is going to sneak out and take over everything in your life, and you just don't know what to do about it.
Wow. That's very well explained. And it comes and goes in periods, as I understand it, right? Like it could be you have weeks or months where everything is really good, or you're kind of hyper energetic, like you've got lots of energy and very positive, and you can do amazing things in that time. But also the flip side of that is the depression that can also last, weeks and months. Is that accurate?
That's pretty accurate. It varies. It has varied over different times of my life. But basically, what happens, you kind of get in this mood where you feel you can do anything, and you sleep less, and your eating habits change. You might even lose some weight. It just seems like everything is changing, everything's different. And I recently told a friend, it's like you kind of think everything is in a clear focus, and you think that everything else was wrong, and what you're doing now is absolutely right. And then that goes on for a while, and sometimes it goes with different intensities. And when it gets really intense after a while, just all of a sudden the bottom drops out, and you might do nothing but sleep for 12 hours a day or more, and just have no energy, no drive to do anything, and be grouchy around everybody, and not be able to accomplish anything at all.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's pretty consistent from what I've heard about that. I hate to ask, but how dark does it get in some of those dark times? Like, how bad does it get?
Well, what was interesting about my case is that when I first started out, the depressive episodes weren't as strong. They weren't as prominent of a feature as the manic episodes were. So I didn't experience a really true deep darkness. But as the years went on, the episodes got darker, the depressive episodes got darker and darker, and there was more concentration on death and dying, and just everything low, just everything low got worse and worse as the depressive episodes went on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I no, that's not really fun to really complicate, but I appreciate that, and I think that helps understand the context of things. And especially, I would wonder, especially in the beginning when the depressive states are not as bad, but then you come out of it and you actually feel quite good, and you've got this energy. Wouldn't that give you like this false sense of like, oh, maybe I don't have this anymore. Maybe I'm getting better long term. Is that part of what you experience?
That would be part of it. That basically there would be three courses in it. That there would be the mania, the depression, and then when I've noticed when I would snap out of the depression, I wouldn't go back into a mania, but I would go into was basically a more normal state, more acceptable, socially acceptable state, I guess, that would follow that, and that might last for a while as well, where my sleep would get back to normal, and I would have a good amount of energy, but not too much, and I would get along better with everybody, and it would just seem that some like a new job would come along or a dietary change would come along, and then I would snap back into the manic episode again eventually.
That is so interesting. I had no idea it would cycle between those three things. So thank you for explaining that. I really
Oh,
appreciate that.
sure.
June, I'll ask you that same question. Like, what is it like to, in your case, live with somebody diagnosed bipolar?
So my favorite analogy, that's not my favorite either, was actually his mother said about his father. It's like babysitting a toddler. And that is what it's like, except the toddler is bigger than you and runs faster. Yeah, so it got difficult at times. When he would be in the midst of an episode, of course, he was not cognizant of his behavior and what he was doing and how it was affecting people. He would become delusional, paranoid, things like that. I had, oh goodness, so many interesting experiences trying to keep him from destroying relationships or doing permanent damage to our finances, things like that, because he had, of course, during manic episodes there's a lot of like spending money without thinking about it, like just impulse buying and things like that, but to the extreme. And we had like thousands of dollars of credit card debt that I had to pay off because he just kind of would take that credit card and like go to the mall when he feels like buying all these new outfits and whatever, and then he'd come home with like a new $1,000 debt, and it was like, oh gosh, okay, well, things like that. We had really some horrendous situations, but I, like I said, I kind of knew what I was getting into, so I never really like blamed him for it. I got awfully mad sometimes, but I tried to kind of keep in mind he's not in control of what he's doing right now, and what can I do to kind of limit the damage or get this back on the right track or whatever. So I tried a lot of like making sure that he was sleeping and things like that. But there were some times when I was very concerned that like if something happened to me, he would have ended up in an institution because he was not able. Even something as simple as like I had to remind him to brush his teeth, or before we went out, I had to make sure he was dressed appropriately because he wasn't thinking about that. He had other things on his mind that to him were like the most important thing in the world, and he was not focused on taking care of himself, or those like when you're manic like that, I think those kind of mundane things seem like don't even matter. So just things like that. I was really concerned that if I was unable to take care of him, that he was going to end up having to be in a group home or something, because he was not able to live on his own most of the time, even as far as like feeding himself and things like that. He just couldn't do it. It was pretty bad. I don't know if you even knew how bad you were.
Sure I realized all that. No, I knew that I would get on a tangent and be thinking about something, any random thing. Or thinking about somebody without acne, or thinking about new clothes, or thinking about some other purchase or a new car or things like that. And I would just not, and all of a sudden it would be 2 hours would pass and I wouldn't have gotten my lunch ready.
Right.
When normally, even my normal state, I would eat too much, basically. But sometimes I just wouldn't be hungry all day, and my appetite would just come and go without any explanation.
And then when you were hungry, you were eating everything in sight.
Right.
So it got crazy sometimes. Bad expression, but yeah, it was it got difficult.
Yeah, it sounds very challenging for sure. I do want to ask, since you mentioned it, you had some idea of like behavioral training or some type of coach. Was that like formal education in school, and how did that end up helping the situation?
Yeah, that was because I majored in psychology and I took some classes. I'm not a licensed counselor or anything like that, but I do have the kind of a background in that. So I had taken classes in behavior modification techniques, which they use with even with kids. When the kid does something that you want them to do and you reward them, just things like that. But that's what they teach in college, right? So I had a background in that. So I tried to do a lot of like when he was if he was manic and I was trying to maybe calm him down, if he sat down on the couch, then I would maybe, sit down next to him and give him attention or things like that. And when he would, be going off on a tangent, I would try to ignore him and not give him the, the reward of, going along with whatever he was going on about, things like that, just simple things. And it worked to some extent, but obviously when you're dealing with something as serious as bipolar disorder, that can only go so far. They have the, of course, cognitive behavioral therapy and things that they do with people, and even the medications, and they really don't help that much, because it's not under his control. He can't do anything about how he's acting. So, if I maybe sat down next to him when he was calm and kind of, put my arm around him or something, that would kind of redirect him for a while, but it wasn't going to solve anything, So I don't know, it helped, but it didn't. I don't know. Did you know you were an experiment all that time?
No, that took me by surprise after I went to look for diet. You told me some of these secrets that you had for the past 15, 20 years. No, I was a little guinea pig all this time.
Everybody knows now. It's all public.
Yeah.
It's all public knowledge now. Okay, well, again, we go back to diagnosis. This is 1995. That's almost 30 years ago, right? So you guys have probably done all kinds of different treatments, medications. You would think in 30 years, that's quite a long time. I'm sure we made these vast steps in our pharmacological solutions for some of these things. And it never really seems like we get very far with some of those solutions. So tell us, what was the journey like in the conventional kind of system and like different medications? Can you stay on one medication for the entire 30 years? Did you have to fluctuate? We hear about people, one works for a while and then it doesn't. You add a second one that maybe works, it doesn't, it has crazy side effects. Like, what was your experience with all the different treatments and medications?
Well, let's see. I've basically been on lithium for since about 2006. I actually started taking it, listening to the psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, and have continued to take that. And then there are also antipsychotics. I've been through a few different antipsychotics over the years, and some of them had some strange side effects, some sexual side effects, which I don't really feel comfortable talking about. But and just in general, more like mood related side effects, just like a sour mood and angry moods that seem to come when I tried. Am I allowed to mention the names of the different
Sure.
medications on here? I know I had G-Con and Abilify. And I just went right through those. Those lasted for a few months here at a time. And then I ended up getting put on Invega for an antipsychotic. And it seemed to work a little better, but I still kind of broke through. The psychosis still broke through on that, but the doctors and nurses kept me on it for some reason.
That's literally what they call that, is breakthrough mania. Like, someone will take these drugs and they work for a while, and then all of a sudden they just seem to stop working, and then maybe they'll start working again. I kind of suspect that they don't really do much of anything, honestly, because just kind of observing him, he was on all these medications and they were supposed to be, controlling his episodes and stopping him from having episodes. But I really think that if he hadn't been on them, it was just his regular cycle. Like, it was no different. Like how he said he would have an episode and then he'd have a period of calmness and then he'd have an episode again. It was the same exact thing with the medication. So, I kind of feel like maybe I don't know. I didn't really think they were that.
But what helped, probably the most helpful medication for sure. Besides, I think the lithium did provide some more stability. And then there's one called trazodone that I take for sleep. And that's finally gave me a good night's sleep. I don't know why it took my treatment team so long to come up with an effective sleeping pill, basically. And now I'm kind of hooked on it, honestly. My doctor tried to lower the dose because she noticed some side effects with your called bradycardia, was a slower heartbeat. But when I lowered the dose, I felt like I was more manic. Again, I wasn't getting as good a good night's sleep. I was waking up at 4 a.m. regularly, and I just didn't feel right. So I went back to my old dose, and my blood pressure is low again. So I don't know what to do. It's almost like you're being poisoned, but it's not as bad as some other types of poisoning.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Now, he's doing so much better. So his practitioner was trying to help him reduce some of these doses and stuff. He's been on him for so long. It's hard to come off of them, because just coming off of them can cause, what was it that we were reading about Invega, the side effect of stopping Invega? Was it just it causes manic episodes in people who aren't even bipolar?
That was it.
People who take it, they assign it off label for I forget what, people who are assigned off label for whatever it is, and I shouldn't even say it because I don't know, but they were finding that when they tried to come off of it, they were having manic episodes even though they never had mental illness at all. So it makes it very difficult when you're trying to stop the medications. That has been a challenge. I'd love to see him off of them, but at the rate he's going, I don't know.
So interesting. We've talked to Nicole about this before, and she said you have to be very, very careful about coming off of these medications and do it, with help and slowly at times.
Right.
It must be really frustrating. You were fine to name all of those medications by their real name. We're trying to get sponsored by Ozempic, so as long as you mention Ozempic, just kidding. That's a joke.
For mania, works for everything else.
That's really common from what I've heard from people. Like, I don't even know if these medications are making a difference, and they might have side effects that might be complicating things even worse. I remember hearing from Dr. Georgia Eads' book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. She talks about lithium in particular. And if you are insulin resistant already and taking lithium, it's way less effective. So I wonder if that was maybe part of that as well. I wanted to ask you about what your diet was like, but understanding that so many people deal with insulin resistance, if that was even part of your story, I wonder if that was why you didn't really like the lithium, or it didn't seem like it was stabilizing the mood the way it should have.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because my new psychiatric nurse has given me a lot of tests to test my levels of lithium and Depakote in particular, and they're both very low. So that might explain why the level of the lithium is not working very well, because of maybe I still have a higher insulin resistance. Is that the connection that she talked about?
If I'm remembering this correctly, I believe she said that as people improve their insulin sensitivity, the effectiveness of lithium in particular gets better over time. So you're right. Maybe that is just something that will continue to improve.
That could be. We haven't read it yet.
And we just bought it last week.
Got it. It's a good one. I'm jealous. If I could go back and unlisten to it, to re-listen to it again, to relearn it all, it's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about diet. What was your diet like back then? Mid 90s through, obviously there must have been several iterations and different changes, but the last 30 years of diet, how would you guys talk about it? Sam, how would you describe your diet?
Well, when I first got diagnosed, I was about almost 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And I didn't have a beer belly at that size. But I had I think of it as a carb belly, maybe a pasta belly, a pizza belly, just all those things, just all those high carb foods were staples of my diet. And ate a lot of sweets, a lot of candy. I drank a lot of cola, and it was just after I learned about this diet, about the low carb diet, I just learned I was doing everything wrong, basically, with eating like that.
When I think about your diet, I think the word train wreck comes to mind. It was bad.
It was really bad.
Both of us, honestly, both of us. I was a shows and weight chips and stuff like that. So we both were overweight. I myself lost like 30 pounds when we started doing this diet. So, I don't know. It was pretty bad, I think. But we had no idea. Nobody tells you this. How are you supposed to know?
Right, of course. You mentioned the diet sounds like a train wreck. It's so funny that we're all sitting here and we all kind of like understand how diet can impact the mental health. But I'm like, I know you guys have the same reaction. I'm sitting here listening to pizza and pasta and soda, and I'm like, oh no. Like, your brain is not going to function. Like, we understand that now, but at the time, you didn't know any of that. There would be
I had no idea.
to that.
We didn't know any of that until last year. We had no idea. It was when, he got on keto, low carb. It wasn't really keto at the time, but he got on a low carb diet because he wanted to lose weight and he was tired of taking insulin. And so we started looking at, what kind of diet is going to help with that. And we found low carb. So we started cutting the carbs. And it wasn't until we did that it was like all of a sudden, he's better, like boom, magic. No idea that could even happen until it did. So, I mean, it was just, it wasn't anything that we heard about at first and then we did it. It was, we did it and found out about it. And then we were like, oh, what happened? This is really cool. Why did this happen? And that was when we started researching, keto for mental health. And we started getting very serious about like measuring ketones and things like that, because we discovered like Chris Palmer's book, and we got an audio copy of that and listened to it together. And we were like, I wish somebody would have told us this 25 years ago, because our lives would be completely different. And that kind of is why he decided he wanted to tell his story now, because we suffered for so long and we didn't have to. We didn't have to go through any of that, but we didn't know. So like the more people we can tell now, it would be wonderful if we want to tell the whole world, this is a thing you can do, and this is going to fix this problem, and you don't have to suffer like we did. I actually was kind of mad about it. I was like, why isn't this out there, but, and I don't think anybody knows about it, honestly.
It's incredible. You just totally gave me chills. It's absolutely astounding, some of this stuff, and learning about it the way that you did. I didn't realize, Sam, that you were also on insulin as well. So you were dealing with that. June, did you have any other health issues just besides having some weight that you wanted to lose?
I never did. I imagine I was insulin resistant because I come from a long line of heavy women who have diabetes and heart disease and such, but I never developed any of that as far as I know. My test results were always good, but I imagine I was heading toward it because I was like 30 pounds overweight and not exercising, not doing anything. I didn't have the energy, but once we started doing the low carb and then getting into the lower carb with keto, I found that of course, the weight, I couldn't keep the weight on if I wanted to, just fell off while I was sitting on the couch. And then two, my energy levels, like I never felt like doing anything, but now like, the house is clean because I can't sit down in the evening. I just have to get up and, go do the dishes and go vacuum the floor and whatever, we started working out. We actually got a gym membership because we needed something to do in the evening besides sit around and look at our phones, because once you have this much energy, like you don't want to do that anymore. So just things like that. And even my I never had the mental health issues either, but I find that I am much more optimistic. I feel happier in general. I feel good. Somebody asked me how I was the other day, and I said if I was any better, it'd probably be illegal. Like I'm happy, it's really wonderful. So just unexpected results.
Yeah, it's just so wonderful, and it keeps me motivated. I've, in the last 5.5 years, I've been doing a mostly kind of pretty strict carnivore diet, and that was the same for me. Like I had been low carb and keto for a while, and I felt great and had good energy. When I took that last step and realized, like, why am I not spinning about a problem that I'm having? Why am I not freaking out that something bad happened in my life? Like you have this extra layer of being able to like step back and analyze and problem solve and address things in a stoic, calm way, where I was so reactive about things. It's just that mind, that calmness in your mind is incredible. It's so amazing.
And totally unexpected. I mean, we, all we were trying to do was get him to lose weight. And yet we had all these crazy good results. It's like, I didn't even know. I always heard, oh, keto, Atkins, whatever, you can lose weight. Nobody tells you what it really does, until we started, it was after everything kind of started going well and we were noticing all of these wonderful things that we started delving into, like we're big Dr. Westman fans now and Kim Berry and whatever, we just really got into, watching all those YouTube videos and things like that and reading every book we could get our hands on, just because we had no idea it was this great. We didn't know there were all these benefits to it, so, and there's still, you still hear in the mainstream media, oh yeah, you can lose weight on keto, but it's going to kill you. It's like, I feel so good. Tell me how this is going to kill me, you know?
I didn't really notice what was going on a few months into it when I started a new job. And I was there and I had a very difficult situation going on. And then I got through a really tough day. June had encouraged me to stay with it this time, don't walk out. And that's what had been my MO for 20 years, to just, if you have a tough time at a job, either walk out or end up getting fired, basically. And so I stuck it out. And then in the ensuing days, when I got back to work and things started going well again, I noticed that something was different. And June noticed something different in me, that this wasn't turning out the same like it always had been. And we figured out it was the diet.
What's gonna say, because he, before he could keep a job, he told you that he would get paranoid delusions about his coworkers and things like that, and we had last fall a rough patch, some expenses that came up, and we didn't have a lot of money to stretch and whatever because he wasn't working. And we were trying to make it work, and he said, I have to get a job. And I said, okay, and then so he started applying places, and he came home this one day from an interview, and he said he was going to go work in a factory, and he's going to be working 12-hour days and whatever. And I was like, okay, so I was trying to talk him out of it. I was like, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure 12-hour days are going to be okay for you? Are you sure like factory work is right for you? And he said, I can do this. I want to do this. And I said, okay, well, what am I going to say to that? No, you can't, So I didn't. I shut up, and I thought, he's going to end up in the hospital, but I'm just going to let it go, and we'll try to do damage control again, And he started there, and that was about a week after was the situation that he was talking about, where they put him on a machine he had to operate, and it was fast. And he's always had a problem with moving fast because probably those medications they got him on, he moved slowly, right? And he couldn't keep up with the machine. And so he called me in a panic, and he said, they put me on this machine. It goes too fast. I can't keep up. I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, take some deep breaths, stay calm, do your best. If you need help, ask for help. He said, okay. And he hung up, and I didn't hear anything else from him the rest of the night. I was fully expecting when he came home that it was going to explode. That he was going to walk in, he was going to be mad, he was going to be screaming, and, I hate my supervisor or whatever, because that's what he did before. And instead, he came home just like any other guy coming home from work. And I said, okay, so, how did that go? And he said, oh, it went just fine. I said, what do you mean it went just fine? Because that was not what I was expecting. And he said, well, I did what you said to do, and I stayed calm, and I asked for help, and my supervisor helped me, and it was fine. And that was when I said, okay, something is wrong here in a very good way, because you never would have done this before. I said, a year ago, if this had happened, you would have walked right out of there and you would have come home screaming. And he said, no, you're right. And that was when we noticed. That was like the first time that we actually noticed the changes, but we had been getting along and everything had been going fine before, but that was like the first situation that we were in where it was so obvious how different this was. It was completely unlike anything he'd been able to do before. So that was the night when, we sat down and started Googling keto for mental health, and, found out about Chris Palmer's book, and, Georgia Ede, and, everybody doing work in that space. I had no clue. We had no idea. So, I mean, it was serendipitous, and it was awesome. And I can't even tell you how happy we are now. It's wonderful.
I love it. You mentioned Chris Palmer's book earlier, and I'm so glad you mentioned that you listened to it versus reading it. I think either way is wonderful. But I have to say, the passion in Chris Palmer's voice as he's reading his book is so striking and so powerful. Like, what was that experience like to not only find this information, but that book in particular, Brain Energy by Dr. Chris Palmer? What was it like to hear that and to hear this doctor's passion for sharing this message? What was that like?
I think I actually cried when we were listening to that book, because it was like, and he is, like you said, he is very passionate about it. And, just the way that he, talks about his work and some of the incredible results that he's had. I do believe it actually brought me to tears. And I'm a big reader. I read a lot. The reason that we got the audiobook of that one was so that we could listen to it together and not have to do the thing where like one of us reads it and then someone else reads it and then we talk about it. That way we could pause and discuss and whatever as we were going through. And I felt like, it was like, first of all, eye-opening. Like I could not believe that this was really a thing and I didn't know about it, and just inspirational the way that he talks about some of his patients and the results he's achieved with them and what can be done, and very excellent job too of explaining how the brain chemistry works and how the ketones are an alternate energy source. Very good job of explaining that so that we could understand it. And that was what that really got us. After we read that, we really were inspired to get the ketone monitor and start checking ketones and reduce the carbs more and whatever. So yeah, a lot of credit to that book. That was a life-changing book.
And I couldn't believe that there were other people out there who had such striking things in common with me, and this, very similar struggles and relatable struggles that they had, and also how disabled they were, the limitations that they had on their life, and how they were able to overcome them. That just blew me away. As I'm a big case study person, that's always my favorite parts of the books that we've read is the case studies.
It's so striking. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm thinking it's probably really good you guys were listening to that book on a smart device, I'm assuming, or like in the car or something.
Yes.
Because like if that were like a cassette tape player or something where you had to hit the pause button every
Right.
time you needed to text, like, you would have worn out the pause button. I'm sure you guys were stopping that book every like 20 seconds with like, oh my goodness, like, did you hear what he just said? Like, it's
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
so amazing. Wow, that's so amazing. Okay, I want to talk about your kind of day-to-day. This is purely speculation. You've been in this world for less than 2 years. You come into it and it's like there's all this amazing information. This information is not new. The studies that these people are talking about, they go back like 100 years. And
Right.
there's you like case studies? There's a mountain of case studies out there of all these people. Yet in the same time that we say that, we also say nobody knows about this.
Right.
Why do you think nobody knows about this? Why is this something that you have to find an obscure weight loss diet to then see some benefit and then all of a sudden uncover this like magical hidden world of like everybody finding this stuff, but it's not mainstream. Nobody knows about it. Why would you assume that would be the case?
Well, I think it's because of the immense lobby on the other side to keep vegetable oils and so-called big sugar. And I hate to be a conspiracy person, but it really seems like there's the other side of this is working extremely hard to promote their own way and suppress this lifestyle.
Right. That's what I said one time. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the further I go into this, the more I sound like one. Because it seems like it is being actively buried so that people don't know. I mean, well, if you were a pharmaceutical company, why would you want people to know that they can cure diabetes and, put their bipolar into remission and whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't know. That's how I feel too. And I don't like to be that way, but it sure is what it looks like, and it's kind of distressing too, because when you think about like the size of the collusion that has to happen, between the companies and the government, and it's disturbing to even think that that's true, but it sure does kind of look that way, doesn't it? I don't like it, but
you just think when you're telling us the story of all these different medications and you can't even tell whether they do anything or not,
right.
And then you change the diet and it working miracles by the sounds of it. If you had a pill that could do like 10% of that would have been very effective, and they would have thrown a parade for the pharmaceutical company down the main streets of New York or something. And you're right. Like, I hate to be conspiratorial, but if this works so well with so many people, and it can't make money for the drug companies, I don't know that it's ever really going to see the light of day either.
That's what I'm thinking too. And I hear, some of the like YouTubers we listen to and doctors we read and such sound so enthusiastically optimistic. Like it can't be hidden forever. It's got to get better. People have to start hearing about it. And it's like, you're more optimistic than I am, because it feels like, yeah, you hear about it and you talk about, oh, I'm on keto and people know what that is now. It's not like the scary Atkins diet anymore. But at the same time, it's like everything you see in the mainstream is, saturated fat is bad. You stick with the lean protein and whatever. And it's like, you people really need to stop. Although I do see that changing a little bit. Like they're backing off the whole, fat is bad thing now, at least. So there's that. So maybe it'll change, but I don't know. I just can't. I'm not that optimistic now, I guess. I don't know. I'm telling everybody I can tell, but
yeah, that's all we can do, right? That's all we can do at the end of the day is try that.
Right.
And I'm going to this conference in 2 weeks, and there's an entire day that's all about low carb and mental health. And Nicole Laurent is presenting along with Dr. Georgia Heed. I get to sit in on these wonderful talks, and there's hundreds of people in this room, and it's amazing. And we're hearing all the amazing stories, and all these experts are talking. And then you leave and you go back to the airport, and you're like, oh yeah, okay. Like it was really cool to be with my people in this room, and it's a few hundred of us, and then it's back out to the real world, and like the reality of the situation just smacks you right back up the head. Like,
yeah,
like it was so fun in that little tiny speck of the world for a weekend, and now we go to the real life, and it's like everybody's suffering, everybody's sick and suffering, and regardless of whether they're going to have dementia, Alzheimer's, bipolar, or whether they just suffer with depression and anxiety, like run-of-the-mill brain fog that we normalize. It's so sad.
And we noticed too that some of the people, like we were trying to tell like our family members, some of our people that we care about who are overweight and have, type 2 diabetes and fatty liver and whatever, like, here's what you can do. And you can do this very simple thing and it will reverse all that and you'll be healthy. And they're like, well, I tried it and I lost 10 pounds, but then cookies. That was literally what someone said to me. And I was like, okay, cookies, but death, I mean, really. So it's like you tell people and they don't even always like accept it. Like it's too hard. It's too, I don't know. I can't understand what's hard about eating like meat and veggies, but well, I guess, when you get, I don't know, trying to think back, like I was really into like the chips and junk food and stuff myself, but when we decided to kind of go this route, he said he wanted to lose weight and like whatever he's doing, I'm supporting it. So, I right away was like, okay, that's what we're going to do then. And I actually found it easy. Once I stopped eating the chips and the candy and the ice cream and whatever, I didn't want it anymore. It was like, it didn't take long. It took maybe like a week or something of just making like steak and veggies and salads and whatever. And all of a sudden it was like, I don't even want the cake anymore. It's not that good, So it just, I think people are just like not willing to go through that adjustment period. Maybe like it's too hard to walk away from it. Yeah, I don't know. It's sad though.
It's sad. I always tell people it's like taking a long trip to a place like Bali or whatever. We're getting to the travel to Bali is awful. You've got to, take a car and you got to park, and then you take a bus and you've got flights and layovers and all these smelly people and everything. But once you get there, it's really awesome. And you can stay there as long as you like. It's like, it's kind of like that where there's this adjustment period where somebody who's addicted to cookies and crackers and soda might think I could never live in a world where I don't eat these things. But they forget that part that you said, like this becomes very easy. You won't want the cake. I'm telling you, it won't taste the same to you. It'll taste like a big pile of chemical that you couldn't taste before. You'll try it again and think it's going to be awesome, and it sucks.
That is exactly what I had one bite of a bakery cake at a birthday party in March, and it tasted awful. And I had indigestion the rest of the night from one bite. Like, why did I even do that? I used to love chocolate cake. Not no more.
That reminds me of something. I haven't had quite as easy of a transition as my wife has, because there was just actually last month I I went out and kind of partied a little bit, and I got a taste for it was like juice and vodka basically what I drank. And it seemed like a couple of days after that, I had this incurable sweet tooth, and I slipped up for about a week and a half. I just ate a lot more sugar than I had this whole year and a half.
It was not pretty either because he went right back into a manic episode as soon as it happened. He
Wow.
started becoming hypomanic as soon as he started eating sugar.
Yeah, I was cranky about work and everything. It was just all the same. And I denied it to myself. I really didn't think there was a problem. I thought, oh, the sugar has endorphins in it, so it's actually helping me. But I didn't realize I was going right down the same path that had caused me all this damage for all these years.
Interestingly, then he stopped, because he was very cognizant of the situation, which was wonderful. He saw the problems coming, and he stopped eating the sugar. And immediately, as soon as he did, he was back normal within a couple of days. It was amazing to see that happen. The way it just rapid decline, and then just as rapid back to normal. It was shocking, really.
I wish people could realize how powerful of a substance sugar is. It is
right.
Yeah.
It makes people say that I would rather have the diabetes and the fatty liver than the cookies. It makes people tell themselves stories about like, this is good, this is giving me energy, there's sugar around.
Right.
I deserve it is one that I see on advertisements all the time, is you deserve a treat. And yeah, you see that message 17 times a day and you'll think you're, oh yeah, I worked really hard for the last 30 minutes. I need a granola bar, or I need another donut or whatever. It's so enticing. It's such a powerful chemical.
Right. No, you deserve better, is how people need to start thinking.
Well said. I love that.
Really?
I did want to ask you about what your day-to-day is like with the diet, because we know, the run-of-the-mill keto and Atkins, the way you had described, like most people had seen that on a magazine cover at the grocery store. Then there's what Nicole describes as like, okay, this is nutritional ketogenic therapy. This is no longer goofing off keto. This is serious keto. You mentioned a keto meter. Tell us what kind of your day-to-day life and diet is like, and how you're able to stay in the stricter therapeutic form of a ketogenic diet.
Well, what I like to do is I'm generally not hungry for breakfast, so I usually skip breakfast or have something very tiny in the morning, and then when I go to work or have a day off, I'll have kind of what I consider like a snack or a lunch full of keto snacks, like beef sticks, cheese sticks, sometimes canned fish, canned salmon, and things like that. Just kind of higher protein, very low carb foods to start off at lunch, and then for dinner, I'll usually have some sort of protein like fish or steak, ground beef, so a main dish like that, and then a veggie. I still I had a little trouble transitioning to the under 20 carbs a day. So I did up my veggies a little bit, kind of like have a nice generous portion of veggies with dinner, and not really worry about I don't really worry about counting the grams of carbs in that, just sticking to the asparagus, the green peppers, the above ground veggies.
What he doesn't realize is that I'm counting the grams of carbs, whether he's counting them or not. So yeah, he sticks under 30 definitely. But I make a lot of beef because I like it. It's like my favorite meat. So we're, always eating beef. I'll make him like liver or beef tongue for a snack. And, he's crazy about that. So that's one of his snack foods. And otherwise just generally sticking with, like the pork rinds instead of chips, and, just things like that. A lot of eggs, and, the whipping cream instead of milk and things like that. So
a lot of cheese.
Of cheese.
Yeah. And then a lot of water, drinking a lot of water, carbonated
water. That's
things like that. Staying nice and hydrated, staying regular and everything. It's important.
Certainly doesn't sound like suffering to me. It sounds like you guys
No.
have a
Oh,
wonderful day.
it's been pleasant.
I love the way we're eating now. It's, you know,
Yeah.
I used to cook a lot of pasta. That was like our, you know, most dinners were pasta based. And at first I thought, how am I going to make dinner without pasta? You know, but then once I started doing it, the more I do it, the more I start thinking, you know, do we really need veggies with this? You know, it's like the meat's really the main deal once you get used to, you know, eating that way. And really, I mean, it was the way, like, you know, when I was a kid, like my grandma was born in the 1910s, and you know, she sure wasn't making tofu for dinner. You know, you would go over there and you had roast beef and whatever, you know, so it's kind of just like a return to that, you know, sort of way that our families were eating before, where, you know, meat is the dinner and the veggies are there to add some color. You know, it's the traditional way.
Wow. Well, it sounds absolutely wonderful. You guys, we have been talking now for over an hour. Can you believe the time flew that quickly?
Oh, that was fast.
You guys are amazing guests. This was such a fun
Okay.
conversation. I am so inspired by how lit up you guys are. And this bug seems to catch all of us when we find it. We're in different stages of our, you know, journey of finding this stuff. For me, you know, 7, 8 years ago, learning that this stuff was out there was like the last time I listened to music in my car. And it was like the same as you. Like, you want all the books and the podcasts, and you just can't wait to share it with everybody. And you get so frustrated when, you know, the woman checking your groceries at Costco didn't really care to, you know, have me point out, like, look, there's no pasta in my grocery cart or whatever. And we wish more people would be open to this, because it's such an amazing thing. But you guys have such a great attitude of like, we're going to share our message. The people that are ready will be able to listen to it, and hopefully, whether it's today or sometime down the road, they can start to implement these things and see the same kind of healing that you guys have experienced. So I'm so grateful for the two of you. Do you have a platform that you would like to send people to? Like, we normally ask, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you to work? I'm not sure if you guys have like a platform or somewhere where you share, want people to connect with you, or do you want people to go find other people like Nicole or Chris Palmer?
We kind of keep to ourselves.
I was thinking, after a good experience like this, maybe we'll think of something.
Yeah, maybe we will. Maybe we should start a blog or something.
Yeah.
We don't right now. We don't have really like social media or anything. It's kind of, you know, our personal stuff. So
no worries.
So
For now,
but maybe.
maybe. Hey, I never thought I'd be doing this, and it's been 3.5 years that I'm doing this. So yeah, there's so many different cool ways that you can share your message. For now, what we'll do, I'll tag Nicole and all her stuff so people can at least have a resource of where to go. But yeah, if you guys ever start anything, reach out so that we can add that as well, because you guys do have a very powerful message, and it is really inspiring. It can really help some people out there. We certainly will do everything we can to spread it out there as well. But for now, June and Sam, thank you so very much for being willing to share your message.
Thank you very much, Casey.
And chat about everything. You guys are both absolutely lovely, and it's such the highest honor to be able to host you on our show. So thank you so very much for your message, and thank you for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for having us. We had a really great time.
Yeah, I did too.
Good. Well, so did I. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.
Oh, I thought that's what I said.
You guys are naturals. You guys are pros. That was good.
Really?
Oh, thank you.
You did great. That was great.
Thanks.
It's so good. You guys, yeah, it was awesome. There was one, this only happened a few times. You'll be able to hear it. I'm not sure what was causing it. It wasn't a big enough deal that I was going to like stop anything. It was interesting. It sounded like one of you would talk and the audio would be crystal clear, and then the other one would start, and it would be like 3 or 4 seconds of almost like the audio would like recalibrate or something. It was really strange. I've never experienced that before, and I have no idea what the cause is. And then it would fix itself, and you'd like, the message would be so good that you'd forget that it even happened, and so it like wasn't a big deal. But there may be like 3 or 4 places where it'll sound like the audio will be like low and kind of cut out, and you might miss a few words, but then it pops right back up and it's totally crystal clear and fine. So
could be your million-year-old laptop.
Could be. I've had luck. I've had really good luck. Even like, I've got this set up for like, you know, recording podcasts, but if somebody has me on their show, even if I just use like really simple, like wired headphones. Sometimes that
Uh-huh.
helps, but obviously
Okay.
that's a challenge because it's two of you. So,
Right.
and I didn't know
Yeah.
if that would solve it anyway. Anyway, it was super not a big deal. Like you'll listen and you won't even hear it. Um,
Okay.
but I do have to say it must be so wild. And again, we don't want to be conspiralists, but it must be so wild to hear some of this stuff and be like, this is fishy. This is really
Right.
bizarre that people don't know about this.
Right. It is. It is bizarre that people don't know about it. Like, how can you not? But then we didn't either until just last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is something else.
It's funny. Like again, since you're kind of you're educating yourself really quickly, so I'm sure you're getting caught up on all of this. But like yesterday, I every week during the summer I've been teaching a nutrition seminar just in my neighborhood, just for people
Okay.
to want to show up. And every week I've got a new lesson. And yesterday the one that I did was called "The Players in the Nutrition Space," which is just all the different people who set our guidelines and where
Right.
we get stuff. And it's like American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, where they got their fake information, the U.S. government, where they got their fake information, the
Yeah.
Seventh-day Adventist Church. Do you guys know the involvement of
Oh,
the
good
church?
God.
Always heard about that.
Blue Zone cereal companies, how they got started. You got all the schools
Mhm.
like the Harvard and Tufts. I literally have the food list here from Tufts University that says
Oh,
that frosted mini wheats score an 87 on like the best foods you can have, and ground beef
mhm.
scored a 26. It's a
Right.
red
Right.
food. And then like all the
It's
documentaries.
infuriating.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like every level. And this is nothing to say pharmaceuticals and the food industry and the medical
Right.
system. It's like, it's so crazy how much money is being made on all of this nonsense.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh,
So
it
I'm so
is.
glad you found what you guys found.
Yeah,
So fortunate.
we're thrilled that we did, because really we could have gone forever and not
Yeah.
have known about it. It was such a coincidence that we might never have found out. So yeah, so we were very, very lucky, and that's why we feel like we really need to be telling people
Oh, good for
about
you.
this. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, you guys did a great job. It was a really good episode. The
Awesome.
genuineness of it all was fantastic. It's going to make an impact. So thank you
Wonderful.
so very much.